talked about economic power and kind of political power and information. Is there a power that you would say is more powerful out of the different types of power?
What I argue is that the three types of power have different levels of frequency. So military political power is fairly infrequent, but it's very strong when it's used. Economic power is a bit more frequent and a bit less powerful. And informational power, we see it all the time. We're inundated with information, but each time we're inundated with a piece of information, it doesn't actually have that much power. So they kind of average out, totally non-scientific, but it is a theory.
I was just say we're in the wrong kind of power.
They're all
informational power.
Yeah, I was just thinking that. Like,
So what you're saying is what Chris needs is economic power, which we're not getting from YouTube,
and military
power.
Or it could be political power. It doesn't have to be military power.
Political power, yeah.
But that comes from a barrel of a gun.
Yeah.
Which is military power.
But it's also interesting because that is also the gun was new technology at one point. Technology really can be a powerful disruptor of previous hierarchies because it changes the access to whatever is important, and that I think is why the space race is the new space race is such an important thing, because that's going we have no idea.
What new space race?
Obviously there's a space race with the U.S. and China.
You mean the one where China's doing all this stuff and we're doing almost nothing?
I'd like to tell you a story, Shelley, about a tortoise and a hare.
Okay.
Now, one would think a tortoise has no chance against a hare in a race.
Was the tortoise moving, though, in this race? That's my question.
So, Andrew, you talk about ratcheting in this book. Tell us about ratcheting.
So the ratchet is where once a power gets power, it doesn't tend to lose it. And the reason is because it can use that power to maintain its power.
Like when Shelley put me on the spot for the rabbit and the turtle thing, I just turned.
That's it.
Took power.
You took power and moved along. Yeah,
I see. I understand that on an intuitive level. Oh, well, so what's an example of that besides what I just did? And maybe how it relates to China.
Examples of that. Okay, so actually a recent example of that is in Greenland, actually. Denmark controls Greenland, or its foreign policy. And part of the way that it does that is it provides economic subsidies to Greenland and to the population of Greenland, which is quite small. So whenever Greenland thinks about breaking off and becoming totally independent of Denmark, it thinks, where are we going to get these subsidies from? No one's going to give us the subsidies. Let's just stay with Denmark. Let's allow Denmark to control our foreign and defense policy.
Can I suggest America buy Greenland? I'm the first one to come up with that.
Yeah, the Trumpian idea.
Only beautiful blonde men can have such audacious thoughts.
Although now I just realized you compared me physically to Trump. So. At any rate, but no, so what you're saying is that Denmark's power over Greenland is basically that it's giving Greenland all this money in the neighborhood of it's a couple billion a year or something like that, right?
Something, yeah.
So it's not an enormous amount, but it is for Greenland, which only has a very small population.
Right.
So then Greenland becomes dependent. It can't break away.
Right. Yeah. So conditions, in the past, when Greenland was taken over, conditions were ripe for expansion. And you did have military expansion of Denmark over Greenland, and colonial expansion. When conditions are now ripe because of nationalism, for breaking off and becoming independent, because Denmark has had control over Greenland for hundreds of years. They have the economic power to maintain Greenland within their defense and foreign policy union. And so they regularly give them these handouts and subsidies.
So that's the ratchet. Like it basically stops it from backsliding towards independence.
Exactly.
Well, so maybe to bring everything together and kind of wrap things up, in the United States, still power is relatively decentralized. It's still a lot about the American people. And as far as combating China, for the U.S. to do anything, that's going to require the American citizenry to sort of understand the risk and take action. So for people watching, what can they do? How do we get more people to really become aware of what's at stake, which is China becoming the world's police, essentially?
Well, first of all, watch China Unscripted and China Uncensored.
Would you recommend any episodes with particular guests?
All of the episodes.
Oh, okay. All right.
Cleo Pascal's episode. I mean, you got to get educated. You've got to understand the way in which China uses its power, the way in which it's seeking global hegemony. I mean, this is now recognized on both sides of the aisle with Rosh Doshi's book, actually, about China seeking. He's looked at all of the Chinese documents and proven that they're seeking global hegemony. That's not a question mark for anyone anymore. Now the question is, how are they getting it? What are the mechanisms? The public needs to be educated on this, which is why you guys are doing such a great job, and why China Uncensored and Unscripted is so important, not only to the current situation with China, but really the rest of global history.
The rest of global history.
Because if people aren't educated about what China is doing today, they could easily become a global hegemon.
Mm-hmm.
So what you're doing is actually a pivot. It's actually pushing in the right direction in terms of decentralization of power, democratization, at a pivot point in history. So it's quite important.
So what you're saying is the entire future of freedom in the world rests on our shoulders.
Exactly.
Okay.
So we are the gatekeepers to the future.
You should tax that.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking of.
Well, I mean, awareness is good. It's a good first start. Where do we go from there? Because I feel like, right now, the U.S. government, we don't even want to use the words great power competition, right? We don't want to say, we're just like, we're an economic competitor or something like that.
Right. We have to get more comfortable because the U.S. government is the only entity out there. It's the only hierarchy out there that can defeat the CCP at this point, or even contain the CCP. We have to get more comfortable with being more active. We have to be more comfortable with concepts like being a global policeman for good and not for evil, because you have a choice between two policemen. Do you want the good one or do you want the bad one?
America, world police.
I feel like
You should make a movie,
Watch
Chris.
the movie.
Watch the movie. All right. Well, Anders, thank you so much for joining us in person. For anyone watching, again, the book is The Concentration of Power. It's a very interesting read. Check it out. We can put links below.
Optimum Publishing International. It's a great publisher, and they do some other very important work too.
Yes, I would say many of their books are optimum.
Yes.
Yeah.
We are the gatekeepers of the future. Thanks for joining us. Thank you for watching. Once again, I'm Chris Chappell.
I'm Shelley Jung.
And I'm Matt Ganeshta.
And we'll talk to you next time.